Hey there, this is Jen, welcoming you between the cracks. If you have visited this channel before, I would like to thank you for coming back and checking it out again. If this is your first visit, welcome and thank you as well. If you like it, the channel, subscribe. If you like the video, hit like, comment, whatever. If you don't, it's not going to hurt my feelings. I'm on a mission. And this video is explaining my mission. And explaining my mission means telling my story. And telling my story means that you're going to hear difficult things. So, big fat trigger warning, childhood abuse, institutional abuse, neglect, SA, whatever, anything that you can imagine, I'm probably going to talk about here. Maybe not all in this exact video, but I felt it important to start the channel off with my own story so that moving forward you can understand my advocacy and when I'm talking about certain institutions that something happened in and we've got to get it shut down, or a state, where we need to advocate. Anyways, I'm avoiding. So I'm going to tell you my personal story as a survivor of the troubled teen industry. We're going to kind of start backwards. And the reason that we're going to start backwards is that 2 days, less than a year ago, I was informed that there was an episode of a podcast called The Last Podcast on the Left that was doing a 3-part series on the troubled teen industry. When my friend told me that, I said, "What's the troubled teen industry?" She started to explain it to me. And my brain started going, "That, what?" I'm like, "Okay, that sounds really familiar. I have to listen to it. Where can I find it?" So I found them. I don't know where I found them. So I listened to the 3 episodes on the troubled teen industry on the last podcast on the left. I also went online and I found Unsilenced and Meg Applegate and all the great work that they're doing for survivors and those children who are still locked up away in these horrible, horrible institutions. The therapeutic boarding schools, the wilderness camps, the treatment centers, just all of these places, they need to be shut down. And this is wide reaching. This is not just something that's a private industry, it's also a religious industry, or it is tied into religions. So I devoured everything I could. And something started to happen to me. I started remembering things just out of the blue. I'd have a night terror or a nightmare, and I'd wake up and I would remember sitting at the front desk with the sign around my neck that said "no male contact" while all the rest of the kids were in class, because that was my punishment for having a little boyfriend when I was in the evaluation unit of this hospital. Now, cut back 1985. I'm 14 years old. I have divorced parents who are both in very bad relationships that are both ending, and I'm seeing this counselor. I really felt like I trusted this lady. It was probably the first time I had trusted any sort of counselor or psychiatrist or anything like that in, at that point, the 4 years that I had been going. And so I would see her every week, and she started talking to me slowly about the idea of leaving home and going to a program that could help me deal with my emotional issues from my family life. And she had a brochure and everything. She's like, "It's got a pool, it's in Minneapolis, to be thousands of miles away from your parents. That's a great idea." And turns out later, I found out this year, when I had a conversation with my dad, he said that they gave him the same sales pitch, that it was the same brochure and everything, that it was a really good break. What they didn't say anything about it being a drug rehab program, because that hadn't been an issue. I had been smoking weed, was smoking cigarettes for a couple years at that point, but I maybe drank a couple times, but I was like an innocent virgin girl. I just was very troubled because what happens to a neglected kid when they want attention? They get in trouble and then they find out, oh, that's how I get attention, so I'm just going to get in trouble. So that puts me and my dad on an Eastern Airlines flight, to tell you how long ago that was, from Detroit to Minneapolis. Needless to say, surprise? Surprise is not even a word. Surprise makes me want to cry. Shock, disgust, immediate need to run in the opposite direction when we got dropped off at a hospital. This was a juvenile detention hospital. It was multi-use. It was drug treatments, mental health, orphan foster type. I'm not 100% sure. I'm still researching this hospital. I'm having a really hard time getting information on it. And I'm about to contact Hennepin County, Minnesota, in the Freedom of Information Act to request records from the 1980s from Fairview Deaconess Hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I remember a very, very tearful and scared goodbye with my dad, who had just put a wall up, which I understand now why he did that. And the next thing I know, I'm in a hospital gown and the slippy socks, on a 5th floor evaluation unit with a bunch of other kids. I can't tell you how many were there. It was maybe it was like 20 in the evaluation unit. That it's like 5 to 7 days, and they evaluate you. They give you medications. I don't remember the medications. I just remember getting the medications. And then you go to your unit. Before you go to your unit, you have to do it's like a call out. You have to bust somebody out on something. So that's the only way to get out, and it has to be something big. But before I'd like to cut back, and I do apologize. But I'm getting another memory in the eval unit. I remember sitting in group therapy circle group, not the circle, but just group, and listening to these kids' stories and these girls my age, 1 or 2 years older than me, and the things that they said that they were doing was blew my mind. I couldn't understand why am I here? How did I get here? Locked in a hospital, 2 states away from my family, and I can't make a phone call because it doesn't matter because I have no rights. I'm a teenager. So there had been a boy that had come in there. He was really cute, blonde looking, beachy kind of kid from another city in Michigan. And it was like a silly little relationship, flirting, kissing in the closet, whatever. So when it was time for me to leave the eval unit, I tried some BS call outs, and I called myself out for lighting a cigarette with the no, don't make me forget, with the light bulb. Sorry, memory. With the light bulb in my bathroom. That didn't work. I said, okay, fine. Tab and I are in a relationship. So I graduated downstairs to my unit. Tab, that kid hated me. And as soon as I was assigned down to my unit, I had already been deemed a problem. They said that I was in denial because I didn't have a drug problem and I wasn't a good enough liar, until I started listening, more so that I could make up stories. I didn't know these things. Excuse me. And I get down to the eval unit and they explain to me, they take me and they show me my room. And there's a lot of fuzziness here. There's a lot of fuzziness in all of it. So I know I'm mid-story, but I just want to say that this is going to be an ongoing journal, like a personal journal, a personal diary of my path through learning about the troubled teen industry and what it's done to me, so that I can change what was broken in me in order to live the kind of life that I deserve. Because I deserve much better than I've gotten. And I'm going to get it. And I'm the only one that's going to give it to me. So as soon as I get down to the unit, they show me where everything is, and they already have an attitude, but I had an attitude too. But I met with the doctor, and that was when he told me that I had to wear the sign around my neck that said no male contact, because I had the whole boyfriend situation upstairs. That meant I couldn't talk to any of the male patients or any of the male staff unless the male staff engaged me first. That was my first day in my unit. I also remember that the food was incredibly vile. I've only ever spent 36 hours in a jail in my adult life, so, and that food was pretty bogue, but this was really like soft-boiled eggs and grits and weird, slimy, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't eat. I would get in trouble for, not eating, and then I suddenly had an eating disorder. I wasn't allowed to go to school. Like I said, I had to sit up at the administration desk all day because I don't know why. Honestly, that's one of the reasons I want to see if there's any way to get any of my records, because I want to know why I was denied an education. I sit here before you, a 53-year-old woman with an 8th grade education and a GED and college, but I didn't graduate. But that's okay. I'm sitting here and I'm smiling at the same time as I'm trying not to cry. Every day, all the staff berated me, called me a liar, called me a denier, told me that I was a failure, and and my favorite word, my favorite nickname for myself, which I came there with, which was useless, that also got thrown at me a lot. They did a thing at Fairview Deaconess, which I know that they do at a lot of the troubled teen industry programs. They did something called the circle. Well, first of all, let me start now. The circle is a part of the game. We'll get into the game later. But the circle, also incredibly damaging. Much like your group meetings, you chairs in a circle, but then there's a single chair in the middle of the circle. And if you can imagine, so say there's 20 kids, and there would be like 4 staff members there as well. So you've got like 24 people sitting around you, and you're in a chair in the middle. And every single person gets a turn at saying the most horrible thing that they can think of that day to say about you. This did happen once a week, I believe. I mean, it could have been more, but I know that it was at least once a week, because this was only a 28-day program. This first program, that I was at was just 28 days. I do wish that I had more details on this. I know that they will come in, and I will continue to share them as they come in. But I do also want to just share as well that I flunked, is the word I think that was used by this ridiculous woman. They had a 98% success rate, at their program, and I'm making them look bad because I'm failing their program, and was then sent to a long-term treatment program in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the outskirts of Ann Arbor, Michigan, called Alpha House. I'm also searching for information on Alpha House, the history, who ran it. I do know that place now is a family homeless shelter, which I think is beautiful. I am going to visit both of these places at some point this year. It is a goal of mine. I will be taking y'all with me. So with Alpha House, it was so, for whatever Fairview Deaconess was, Alpha House was like, so we could compare it to the prison system. So Fairview Deaconess, figure in the drug program, that's like being in a camp or a level 1 prison in the state of Michigan. I don't know how everywhere else works, but going to a long-term treatment program, or a hospital or therapeutic boarding school, the place that I went to was 6 months on, and these poor kids were so broken down. They really had, on top of their mental health and emotional issues from their family, they also had serious addiction problems. They were sexually active all over the place. It was very uncomfortable. And again, I had a whole staff that just did not believe a word that I said. There was one girl there that was really nice. She was young. I don't know if she was an intern or what her deal was, what she was doing there at the program, but I do remember that she had her jaw wired shut, and I was fascinated with that fact. Like, how do you eat? Just freaked me out. My anxiety, does that. And she's the only person that I remember that was kind to me. That's why I bring her up. I ended up running away from Alpha House 3 times. It was pretty far out in the sticks, so I one time made it downtown Ann Arbor, but I didn't have the resources to get a hold of anybody that I knew to come to all the way to the 50 miles from Detroit to Ann Arbor, which at the time seemed like a million miles, to come get me. So I always ended up going back because of somebody that I was with. One time the cops brought me back, and then the last time we were found and brought back, and my family was there, and that's when they sent me out of that program. The only good thing that came out of that program was the day that I remember sitting in a small room at Alpha House, and my dad, my grandma, and my mom were there, and somebody from the staff was like, they had known I somehow found the strength to finally speak this truth, and something that happened to me when I was 4 years old. And I told my family in a small room, my mother, who was no fault of her own, out on a date with the guy next door, and his kids were left to babysit me. And my grandmother, who I was just mortified to say anything bad in front of, because I was never good enough for that woman. Unfortunately, I wanted to be everything she wanted me to be, but it was not who I was born to be. And my dad, it was all very difficult. I remember each of their reactions very clearly. And then there was a blank, and then they escorted me out. But at this point, it had been decided that I was not going to move back in with my dad. His divorce was final, and he had moved already at that point, and my mom was not in a situation that I could live with her still. And so I'm 15 at this point, and I end up going to live with my grandma. And I start a regular public high school, the different school than I had previously been at for the first, a semester and a half of ninth grade. So this would be, I went in there for 10th grade, and I was expelled within 3 months. It wasn't acting out so much as it was just, at that point, I mean, even before I had gone away to Minnesota, I had started running away from home. I guess when it comes down to fight or flight, I was a flighter. Now I'm a fighter. And I'm really grateful to be a fighter, because it's exhausting being a flighter, because when you run from all your problems, the problem is that you're there when you get to the new place. So it doesn't solve any of your problems, you're just changing geography. So that doesn't work out. I had to move in with my grandma. I was expelled within 3 months, and then I was sent to this alternative school. Brilliant, genius idea of the suburb that my grandmother lived in. They had a school with the children from 5 school districts that were expelled. All their troubled kids from 5 school districts were sent to this school. There was 60 kids, and 3 of them were girls. I was one of the 3. It was like, I would say it felt like walking into a lion's den with a meat dress on. It's what it felt like. It freaked me out. It scared me to death. I ended up there for another year, and I don't know at what point. I believe that when I was still in Minnesota, I started to lose my memory. Then when I was in Ann Arbor and the things that I was experiencing there really started to lose my memory. And then when I was released from Alpha House, and I was technically going to school, but it was a day treatment program. It was all very basic education. I couldn't have been more bored because I was advanced. I was not basic. I didn't have the same learning disabilities. Of course, back in the 70s and 80s, folks, they didn't believe that girls got ADD, or what everybody now calls ADHD. They thought it was just a boy problem. They didn't start diagnosing females until the 90s. I was in my 20s when I got my diagnosis. And so this is where we sit today. And I can smile because I've started my journey. So I'm super excited, and anybody who wants to come along with me, I welcome it. I welcome questions. If anyone ever wants to come on and do a video with me, I'm down for that. I'd like to give a huge shout out, though, to Tommy Scoville and everybody over at the Lifeboat, because if it wasn't for Tommy and everyone at the Lifeboat, I wouldn't be doing this. And as a matter of fact, I wouldn't have made it to the new year. So this is about connection while I'm sharing my story. And I just want to say I love you and thank you to everybody in my Lifeboat crew. Please stay tuned. There's a lot more to come. Have a great night.